All right, go ahead.
Okay, so let me make sure that I'm not strawmanning your argument, right? You're saying that with regard to governmental systems, it is the case that there is no ought, right? What's being discussed is the is, correct?
There is no, well, not necessarily ought towards the government systems, but when states interact with each other.
Was that it?
Yeah. So my opinion, my position is one of realism. So like, in a state, or in a, not state isn't like a nation, but in a state of anarchy where there is no kind of, when there is no governing body or someone to limit any kind of uh, being, individual organism, state, etc., then they exist within a state of anarchy.
Okay. Now, if you would, I want you to recite what you think my argument was yesterday.
Oh, geez. Well, I think yesterday it just seemed that you were trying to state. So I just have to do this off memory. It seemed that what you were trying to argue for was that there needs to be some kind of ought in the system because individuals in our government have moral opinions on things.
No. This is why things got so fucky
Well,
yesterday because
I'm also going off memory here, Declan. So you're
no,
good.
I know, I understand. Um, what I said was not a declarative statement, it was a question, right? We established what the is was, and I said that over and over and over. But when I would ask this question, you would say that's not the way that it is. And I said, I know there's a difference between what is and what ought to be, right? So then I brought up the thought experiment, right? What I was asking for was your opinion. We know what the is, right? Now let's apply the principle of anarchy
Yeah. So
in a governmental
the
system at a
problem,
smaller level.
but like the problem with your question, right, was it involved the an inconsistent use of the word legitimate. That was the problem with it. That's why it was nonsensical.
Okay, so the first time I brought up that thought experiment, I didn't use the word legitimate.
Yeah, you did.
No, I actually didn't.
Yeah, you said, if is that a use of legitimate power, legitimate use of power.
I'm pretty sure I didn't. I'm pretty sure
Well,
I
I don't
stuck the
know if
I.
there's a recording of that, but I'm pretty sure you did.
The second or third time, I know I used legitimate. But when I first brought it up, I stuck to odds because that's what the question was about. And you kept saying over and over and over, that question's nonsensical because that's just what is. And I said, no, you're not understanding, right? I know what you're saying, right? I know what the is. The question is, in light of that anarchist principle, okay, we had this thought experiment where we have the man and the woman in the bed. Do you think, do you personally think, would you apply that principle for your personal use and your personal beliefs in that situation?
The principle doesn't. Okay, yeah, this is the problem with the question, right? The principle just doesn't apply. The is irrelevant to that scenario.
Okay, if the is irrelevant to that scenario, then why did you spend 45 minutes telling me I didn't understand because
Because
that's
you
just what
kept
is?
asking me about the scenario and what my why you were trying to show some kind of inconsistency in my
No,
opinions, right,
no.
Declan? But hold on, let me finish, right? But it was inconsistent with what I was saying, right? The is of a state of anarchy only applies when there's no ruling body. And in your example, that's why I specifically asked you in your hypothetical, is there a ruling body? And the first time you told me that there is no ruling body, and then I told
False.
you, no, look, Declan, this is what you said. You said there was no ruling body. I said, okay, if there is no ruling body, then there is a state of anarchy.
No.
Then you changed it later. Right? Afterwards, you had said to me that there was a government, and then I said, okay, the state of anarchy doesn't apply then.
Let me tell you why I know you're wrong, okay? And this is no offense to you. Why I know you're wrong is because the thought experiment was set up specifically to mirror the relationship between an anarchist system, right, and a non-anarchist system.
I don't. When you
So in
say
other words,
anarchist system, what are you saying when you say anarchist system?
let me explain. In my thought experiment, the person breaking into the house was meant to represent a sort of abstract ruling person or body or power, right? The idea being that if we applied that principle in this scenario, we know what the is, right? The man or the group of people or the robbers, whatever the fuck you want to call them, are going to march upstairs where the couple are sleeping, okay? And they're going to beat the shit out of the wife or kill the wife or whatever. And when the husband wakes up in the midst of it, the question of mine was, do you think, in your view, he has a right to say, hey, what are you doing to my wife? And also, do you think that the robbers or the person has the right to say, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so
you know,
hold on,
what
Declan, right? So this is it's gonna get to a he said she said on the history of it, right? So let's not fuck with each other, right? So the moment you asked me that question, I said great, and then I immediately responded with, "Is there a government in your hypothetical?" And I specifically remember asking you that, not once but twice. I was very, very clear on that being relevant and the deciding factor in my answer to your question. So,
okay, so
whatever you intended, right? The first time you answered it, your answer was no.
okay, so let me assume we'll go through both scenarios, right? I'm pretty sure I didn't, but we'll go through both scenarios, okay? Let's assume that I did for the sake of argument. If there is a government, okay, what bearing does that have on the viewpoint of the husband and your personal values? Because that's what the question is
Well, it's
about.
not a so like I mean you keep trying to get back to my personal values, but it only comes down to a question of whether there's a state of anarchy. If there is no state of anarchy, then someone does have the right to personal property outside of their own personal ability to defend it.
Okay, so again, we're running into the same problem. I'm asking you through this thought experiment what your personal values are in light of what we know is. The question is not whether you are correct about an anarchist system, right? That's not the question. The question is, do you agree with it?
Do I agree
You
with what
agree you
is?
agree with that principle. Do you agree with what is in that system, right?
Yeah,
Do
I
you?
do, because that's just the
Okay.
way it is.
Okay. So, if I understand you correctly, if there is no government, okay, let's assume everything that we've assumed about what you've said about anarchy, and what is legitimate by your standard. I want to make sure I understand this. You don't disagree that people have the right to walk into one's house and follow through in that thought experiment with the wife and the husband.
I
In other
disagree. I
words,
disagree on the language, right? It's not about
why?
the right, it's about the ability. There are no rights in that sense. It's just about ability. It's about power. It's a question of who can
In that
it's
sense
a
is
question
not
of
the
who can
question.
dominate.
In that sense is not the question. I'm asking you about your
Look,
values.
it's a question of domination, right? I don't this is not confusing in any way. It's a question of domination. In a state of anarchy, it's all about who has the ability and the power to dominate other people. That's just
Do
it. There's
you
nothing.
agree with that? Do you agree
Okay.
with that principle?
Do I agree with it?
Personally, in your
Yes.
own
Why would I be
ethics.
espousing it if I didn't agree with it?
Okay, so I'm glad we got past this. Number two, watch your voice inflection because you're getting a little heated. Okay. Number three, I want to
You're
make
not my
sure I
dad,
don't
Declan.
strawman you here. No, I understand I'm
Yeah,
not
so
your
shut the
daddy.
fuck up
Okay.
about my voice inflection
Okay.
and move on to your point.
No, I won't do that. You can go fuck yourself as far as that's concerned. Okay. Number three, I want to make sure I don't strawman you here. You agree morally, right? That if a system of anarchy exists, that The man has no right whatsoever to object to his daughter or his wife being taken, because what is
Oh, look,
just
you're just applying some principle to a system that makes no sense. That's why I
I'm
say it's
applying the
just
principle to
nonsensical,
you.
Declan. I'm
I'm
not going to
applying
answer that
the system.
question. I'm not going to
Okay,
answer
well
that
then,
question. So if that's
okay, well
if
it's
you're
fine.
not
You're
going to
just
hold on,
evading.
Declan, if
You're
you're
just
not
evading.
no, I'm not evading at all, right? It's so irrelevant. It's so nonsensical to the principle. Right,
Why? No, no, no. Why is it
I
nonsensical?
already said I agree with the principle. I already said I agree with the principle. I find that to be that seems to be reality, right? Morally, whether I agree with some individual using their power is so irrelevant
Why?
because it has nothing to do with the principle.
Yes, it does, because that principle is now applied in a situation with a group of people
Yeah,
or a singular
look,
person.
look, I personally would not go around killing people unless I was
Why?
absolutely forced to. Why? Because
Why?
I don't enjoy killing people.
Okay, so are you saying then that you don't apply that same standard, or you do apply that same standard to the person who's doing the killing?
No, the standard is still applied. It's a question of what I would do is what you're trying to ask, right? What you're
Yes.
trying to do, like, let's just be honest about what you're trying to do, Declan. You're just trying to find an inconsistency in my personal beliefs in the
No,
principle.
I want your opinion on it.
Yeah, my opinion is that that is a fact. That's a fact of the matter.
Is it moral or immoral for people to act that way?
Why are you asking me that?
Don't worry about
No,
why.
look, we're done. If you're not, if no, look, I'm not answering that. Say we're done.
Okay, that's fine. Well, then you just copped out and evaded. Thank you
No,
very much.
bye.
And
Bye,
that's
Declan.
that's
Bye.
what
I
I
didn't
meant
cop
by
out at all,
wrecking.
Declan. It's irrelevant.
That's what I meant by
It's
wrecking
it's
you. Thank you.
irrelevant. It's irrelevant,
Right.
Declan. You're just asking me an irrelevant question. Bye, Declan.